tonight we are honored with the presence of to have Professor Auli Heynon, who is a senior fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government Medical Center, a specialist in nuclear energy. He served for a long time, for 27 years, at the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna. And he was the Deputy Director General of the IAEA and head of its Department of Safeguards. Prior to that, he was Director of the agency various operational divisions and as Inspector, including the IAEA Overseas Office in Tokyo, Japan. He led the teams of international investigators to examine nuclear program of concerns around the world and inspected nuclear facilities in many countries such as South Africa, Iraq, North Korea, Syria, Libya, and elsewhere. Of course, our subject tonight is the challenges of implementing the global nuclear proliferation regime. And of course, there are concerns now about the framework agreement with Iran about its nuclear program and whether that will allow Iran to play a very disturbing role in this neighborhood of the world. Many Arabs, especially in the Gulf, are worried that the West, with such an agreement, if it's signed as a final accord in June, might unleash Iran in this part of the world and allow it to expand its influence and involvement in many countries in the area. However, there are others who think that such an accord will probably enhance peaceful transformation of the political system in Iran and enhance economic development, probably, and allow Iran to have better political and economic relations with its neighbors. At any rate, I will not really expand on the subject, but will allow Professor Heynon to tell us a better story about the accord and probably how we will be able to contain the nuclear energy program in Iran. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for inviting me to Kuwait. It's a pleasure to be here. It's the third time when I am here, and the first time I came here actually on my way to Iraq in 1991, which changed entirely my life for years to come. I was thinking to tell a little bit about the IAEA and its role here. Just a couple of minutes at what is IAEA, what it does, what it can do, what it cannot do. And then I spent more time to explain this Iranian nuclear framework, which was concluded on 2nd of April. And I have a few slides, and I think that the organizations, I don't know whether you gave this pamphlet which we wrote in Harvard to explain this in more details, about 30-40 pages, but I have extract of this and give you an idea how this now will develop in next few months. What kind of nuclear Iran we have at end of this year, what kind of nuclear Iran we have 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and then hopefully after that. So keep, and I'm not going to bother you with technical details, but try to give a fair overview. First of all, International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA has been entrusted to administer safeguards. Safeguards is a system which verifies that the member states and those who have concluded safeguards agreement follow their obligations. And this verification is a little bit like auditing of the bank or auditing of financial institution. You have income, you have costs, and then you have inventories of equipment, and you have funds or assets which you have. And then once a year you need to close the books. So the nuclear installations do the same. They follow what nuclear material comes in, what goes out, and once a year IAEA goes there and take a stock and see that what is written in the books is still there, and the nuclear material is indeed in that use which has been declared, and it's not used for any other purpose than peaceful use. And this was foreseen already as a task for IAEA in 1950s when the IAEA was established. But then the life changed in the end of 1960s when this non-proliferation treaty was concluded, where states agreed that they will join this treaty and they will have a few benefits out of it, but it comes also with the obligations. So those so-called non-nuclear weapon states agree that they will have access to nuclear energy, but it will be only used for peaceful purposes. And then they will not acquire any nuclear weapons. And then there will be an IAEA system in place which will see that this material is not diverted from peaceful purposes to non-peaceful purposes. And then this was for the non-nuclear weapon states. Then we had on those days 5 nuclear weapon states, which meaning Russia, US, UK were the 3 first nuclear weapon states which joined the treaty. France was part of negotiation but joined later, and China much later. But they all had already tested nuclear weapon by the end of 1960s. And therefore they were dealt or have been dealt in a very different way under this regime, and I explain it soon how. Then IAEA, when it looks these states which are under safeguards, it looks not only nuclear material, nuclear installation, but it looks the state as a whole, to see that all these activities, nuclear installations, nuclear material, nuclear infrastructure, do they really serve that purpose which has been stated that it's for peaceful purposes. So the IAEA looks not only what they have declared to the IAEA in terms of nuclear assets, facilities and nuclear material, but the IAEA tries also to confirm the absence of undeclared nuclear material. And that's where the problem with Iraq came in the late 80s, because what they did, they created a parallel fuel cycle without telling to the IAEA, and IAEA was allowed only to look the declared ones. And then when IAEA makes this conclusion that there has been no diversion of declared nuclear material and no indication of any undeclared nuclear material and activities, then it concludes that in this country all nuclear activities have been remaining for a peaceful use. And this is done once a year. So every year this information is re-reviewed, additional inspections are done, and every year IAEA makes this statement. Then I mentioned non-proliferation treaty. But then there are, and this is where most of the states are today, like Kuwait is member of it, Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Finland, Brazil, Argentina, Japan. Those are all party to the NPT. And they have comprehensive safeguards agreements, which are kind of protocols how IAEA implements safeguards. There are obligations for the states, and there are inspection rights and obligations for the IAEA. It's like a rules of game in this small book, which defines what they need to tell, where IAEA can go, what kind of access rights are. But then there are these other 2 groups of states. First of all are those who are not party to the non-proliferation treaty, which are India, Israel and Pakistan. They were negotiating in 1960s to this treaty, but they decided not to join. And as you know, all those 3 countries have nuclear weapons. But the IAEA still does inspections on certain facilities. because of some transfer agreements, they got some nuclear installations in the past with the understanding that they will be only used for peaceful purposes. And then, like the United States of America, which sold a reactor to Israel, requires that the IAEA inspects that reactor every year to make sure that this is not misused. But the IAEA doesn't inspect anything else in Israel. Same is with Pakistan and India. Those reactors which the Chinese have built, for example, to Pakistan are inspected regularly by IAEA. But then IAEA doesn't have any access to any other installations like Kahuta enrichment plant in Pakistan or Chashma reprocessing plant. Kusha. And then IAEA does also some safeguards verification in these 5 nuclear weapon states: China, France, Russia, UK and US. But this is a very limited, because IAEA doesn't want to use the resources to look the civilian cycle in these countries, because they already got nuclear weapons. So it's not the best use of resources. So there are some activities, but this has been decided by economical reasons that they will not be inspected. And then there is one outlier in this case. I have not mentioned North Korea. North Korea wasn't a party to the NPT, but then it took a long time actually for them to ratify the safeguards agreement. They did it in 1992. And then when you ratify the safeguards agreement and the safeguards implementation starts, you give what is called initial declaration. So you tell which nuclear material you have, where they are located, and which kind of facilities you have. And then the IAEA goes and confirms that. And in that process, IAEA came to the conclusion that North Korea had actually not declared everything. There were questions regarding their plutonium holdings. And then IAEA wanted to visit some additional locations which North Korea declared as military installations and say that there's no nuclear material there and this is off limit for the IAEA. Something very similar you hear from the other side of the bay in recent days, and I'll get more to that. So then the IAEA had some inspections until 2002, then we were kicked out from North Korea. We returned back in 2007 after the first nuclear test. Then another dispute came with the US and P5+1, and then since spring, April 2009, IAEA has had no inspections in North Korea. And North Korea is busily expanding its nuclear weaponry like to India and Pakistan. And a very quick look, this non-proliferation treaty, it entered in force in 1970. And today there are about 100 treaty parties, which means that practically all states of the world are party to this treaty. There are few small states in Pacific island states which are not party. Even many of them are party to the treaty. And about 180 of them have concluded a safeguards agreement, like Kuwait has with IAEA. And out of this 190 states, about 80 of them have actual nuclear installations, which have substantial amount of nuclear material. They have research reactor at least. And those are the ones which IAEA inspects annually. And visits to places like Kuwait, which doesn't have nuclear installation, are indeed very rare. Then, a little bit, I mentioned that there are treaty parties, 190 and 180 have safeguards agreement. And there is a nuance here, because when China joined the NPT, Taiwan had to move to a special section, but IAEA does inspections in Taiwan. Then after these findings in Iraq in 1991, people realized that the IAEA safeguards need some strengthening, and then came to existence this additional protocol, which is also one of the key documents which we need to have in Iran. I explain later. And this is the statistics from year 2030. So there were more than 1,200 installations in the world which were under some kind of IAEA verification or monitoring. So it's a huge enterprise. The IAEA did then 8,000 inspection days in field. The IAEA has about 2,300 or 2,200 staff members. This department, which is doing this verification work, has a little bit more than 800 people in the payroll, and they cover the whole world, mainly from Vienna. There's an office in Tokyo and another one in Toronto, where people also do inspections on that geographical area. And so they travel from Vienna to the place. Then there has been, actually maybe I go to the still save some time. So as I mentioned, the IAEA system is based on auditing and verification, and there are various ways to do it. Whenever IAEA goes to some place, it does actual verification, measurement of nuclear material. Here on the left top corner, this is actually a tube from an enrichment plant like Iran, where uranium hexafluoride goes in this pipe, and there is a detector which measures how much uranium-235 is there, and makes sure that it's not enrichment higher than declared. Then my African friend is measuring their uranium hexafluoride cylinders. This is the way uranium is moved around as a gas form. And then the inspectors are measuring, and on the right hand side down they are measuring the weight. So what you do is you do like a financial auditing. Instead of counting money, you count the cylinders, you weigh the cylinders, this is counting of the coins, and then you have a special detector which says that the banknote is let's say 1,000 dinar. Here it says that so and so much uranium fissile isotope 235. Then you have a number which you compare to the operator's declaration. And then you have an uncertainty. This is a physical measurement, so there's an uncertainty. You know how precise your measurement is. You know how precise is the measurement of the facility operator, and then there is a small tolerance which is around. If it is out of that, then there will be a special investigation. Then Iraq brought another thing to the picture, and this is really a powerful way to look at undeclared nuclear material and activities. If you want to conceal something or hide, you move the equipment away. But this uranium particle, since you deal with the bulk material which is not in a containment, leave small drops here and there, so small tiny minuscule particles. They are about the size of 1 micrometer. So what the IAEA does, that it takes to this cotton swab, which you see here, this white thing, you take that swab, and then you have a special device where you pick the individual particle, and then it's a special mass spectrometer. You measure that, and you get the isotopic composition. You get also the chemistry of that, so you know which form of uranium chemical you have. If you are lucky and there is a particle big enough, you get impurities. And then when you have this information, you compare it to what they have declared to you. And it has to match. You have to find the same material somewhere in their stock. And this was exactly what we found in Iran in 2003, when we went with El Baradei there at the end of February 2003, when Iranians finally invited IAEA to visit the Natanz. They said at that point of time that they have built these centrifuges of their own. We never did any uranium material measurements, or this is just in the very beginning of the program. This is the product of Iranian engineers and their skills. There's been no foreign help or anything. And then they were kind enough to let us to take these samples. And then to our big surprise, we found their high-enriched uranium in the place which should have had no uranium. And what was very interesting on those particles was that they had also one specific uranium isotope, which points to the history of material that it had at one point of time been in a nuclear weapons state. because nuclear weapon states used to irradiate uranium in a reactor to produce plutonium, but then they took this same uranium for enrichment. And that was a puzzling thing, because you got two signatures. First of all, material which should not have been there, and then this fingerprint which pointed to nuclear weapon states. So basically we knew immediately that this nuclear material which we saw there could have come in principle from 5 states: United States of America, UK, France, Russia or China. Well, it was very easy to rule US out, and I think at UK also. But then it started to be difficult because of the histories. And then came a big surprise that it was from Pakistan. And how it got from Pakistan is that the Iranians bought the technology from A.Q. Khan or from Pakistan, and then in a very early days you have seen that there's a nuclear relation between Pakistan and China. So the Pakistanis had got some nuclear material from China and used it in their own plant, and then they sold this used equipment to Iran together with the contamination. And that's how it ended up there. And it was very difficult to get, first of all, the Pakistanis to agree on that. But finally they realized that they had to explain it. So it's a very, very powerful tool. And another scientific adventure which we had, and that's the end of the science in this presentation, we had in Syria. You remember in 2007 there was a bombing of a reactor building with Syria, said it's not the reactor. So finally then they agreed us to go there and take these samples. And we collected quite a lot of samples from Al-Kibar, or they call it now, or its real name is Dair al-Zur, but they call it Al-Kibar for some reason. And it also had uranium particles, but this time very different. So, because when you go, even if we take a sample from the sand over there on the beach, it has uranium, because uranium is fairly abundant element. There's a very little, but we will find uranium with these tools. But this uranium which we found in Al-Kibar was a different type. It was what we call a man-made. It was a very fixed chemical compound which had a certain composition which doesn't exist in nature. Uranium in nature is always together with the silicates or some other chemicals. This was a pure uranium, and that started a long discussion which went for a year with the Syrians until they never really admitted entirely, but they acknowledged that they had had some activities with uranium, and that they declared those. But the Syrian file is still open because there are some other questions which were done. Then IAEA does this. It also uses other information. As I said, that IAEA looks the state as a whole, so looks at scientific publications, procurement and acquisition of equipment, particularly dual-use equipment, which can be used for nuclear and non-nuclear purposes. And then sometimes it gets also information from intelligence agencies, so it puts all this together, but it does its own decision based on certain procedures. So it doesn't take, if someone pokes to your room and says that there's a strange place there, go there. Now IAEA doesn't do it. It goes through a very elaborate information analysis to make sure that the requests and conclusions are sound. And then we get the challenges. There has been, most of the states, they have good behavior. Out of this 180 safeguards agreements, so far we have had this less than 10 cases where there's been really non-compliance with their undertakings. So this is the good news, and why this happens is that IAEA verification system is very robust. So the countries, it's very difficult to do this undeclared activities in the declared facility because you leave this contamination which will be caught. So there is a high risk of detection. So what is left then for these states who want to do activities outside, they go to undeclared places and secret locations like your neighbor Iraq went, they were in Tarmiya, in Asharqat, Al-Yazira, in Al-Qaim, and built facilities there without telling to the IAEA. And in 1980s, when the satellite imagery was less available, it was easier. Today it will be much more difficult, so now they go then, who doesn't go underground? And then it's very difficult to say from the image you only see a hole in the ground and there's no sign. But these are the cases which were there. The big cases actually are Iraq, North Korea and Iran, and perhaps Syria. The others are kind of much smaller, which really didn't have that much non-proliferation thing. And now we go to Iran. I tell what is Iran today, and then I go to this agreement, but that you get it done. But Iran basically has a front-end fuel cycle. Front-end fuel cycle is that they have their own uranium resources, and they have enough material to at least to partially fuel the Tehran research reactor, IR-40 or Arak reactor, which is under construction, and then they have a lot of plans for future, and then they have the Pusher reactor, which is down there. And they have this fuel cycle chain all the way. So mining, they have small mine in Katsing, in Bandar Abbas, then a bigger one in the middle of the country, Sagan. But they all together can produce about 70 tons of uranium per year. So if you take that uranium and you want to produce fuel for Pusher, you can only produce every year for 3-4 months of fuel for Pusher with that uranium, because Iran doesn't have very big uranium resources. It's very different from Jordan or from Syria, which have a lot of uranium in their phosphate minerals. Then you take this ore from mining and take it to milling machine facility, where you purify uranium to something which is called yellow cake, and that's why the color there, Kachin and Ardakan. These are installations which Iran has built in the last few years. Then they take it to a conversion facility in Isfahan, where they turn it to uranium hexafluoride. This is what you feed to the centrifuges. And then they have these two enrichment plants, one in Natanz, one in Fordo, and there in the middle you see President Ahmadinejad is walking. There's a bigger picture there. And then they have some simple fuel fabrication activities in Isfahan. And therefore, until today, TRR is a Tehran research reactor. All the fuel has come actually from abroad. Originally, the reactor came from the United States. They provided the fuel. And then at a later time, IAEA helped Iran to buy this fuel from Argentina in the early 1990s. And this is the way Tehran research reactor has been running until very recent times. And now Iran is experimenting fuel production, and they got few fuel assemblies for that research reactor. Pusher reactor has a long-term contract with the Russians, first 10 years until I think 2023. They are going to get fuel from Russia, and after that, following 10 years, they have a preliminary contract which can provide another 10 years. So there is no urgent need for fuel. And then Arak reactor is the one which is under construction. This is an Iranian variant of an old Russian heavy water reactor. And the worries on this particular reactor is that it's able to produce what we call a weapons grade plutonium. And this kind of reactor has actually very little scientific use today. And it's not really for isotope production either. So very few countries today have such reactors. But in the old days, when access to enrichment, this uses natural uranium without any enrichment. This was very popular, and it was certainly the backbone of most of the nuclear weapons programs. So here is President in the middle, and these are so-called IR-1 centrifuges, which are on both sides. Iran has 18,500 of them today. When we went with El Barada in February 2003 to Natanz, they had 100. So it's a tremendous growth since then. So we can say that they are practically now in a semi-industrial scale. And then they have the more modern IR-2M centrifuge in Iran. And our problem is that we actually don't know how many they have manufactured. And here you see how the number has gone up since 2007. There is a small hump there for the Stuxnet, and then you see that then when the negotiations started, Iran stopped the installation, and then maybe from this summer, I'll explain it in more detail, they will go down to the one which you see right. Now, what you can do with these centrifuges? Oh, this came other than English, okay. This is the estimate I made that this blue one on the left, this is if they use all 6,500 centrifuges which they are allowed to have on this new deal. How long it will take if they go from natural uranium to enough material for one nuclear weapon. And it's 53 plus minus 5 weeks is my estimate. And nobody has disputed it. But if they have the more modern centrifuges which they now have, then it will be the next line. But the most important is this lower one there, the right-hand one, because if you put all those 18,000 centrifuges, 18,500 to work, it only takes about 5 or 6 weeks. And this is the matter of concern, because then if they do that, even if the IAEA finds it out, the international community really doesn't have time to react. So that's why the negotiators set the bar that they should have at least 1 year time, what they call breakout time, so that if Iran decides to go for a nuclear weapon material, they will see it in time and they have time to act. But this agreement is a little bit more complicated. So there are, as I mentioned, 3 time frames. Now Iran goes to this 6,000 centrifuges about. Then there is a cap how much they can have enriched uranium in a country, only 300 kilograms. And if you have those 6,000 centrifuges and 300 kilograms, you have 1 year time. They cannot go faster. But this is kept like this next 10 years. But when you come to year 11, before that Iran doesn't install any new centrifuges, it doesn't build any new facilities. But after 10th year, they can start to install additional centrifuges, which means that the breakout time will go down. Now, they are still having a cap how much they can have enriched uranium. So anything extra should be shipped out from Iran. There is a difference in view here between the US fact sheets and the Iranian fact sheets, which I call a war of fact sheets, because after these negotiations they had a little bit different views on this. But then after 15 years, Iran will be treated like any other non-proliferation treaty member. There's no restriction. They can do as much enrichment they want. They can build additional centrifuge facilities as much as they want. There's no restriction on this agreement. And then Arab reactor, there are a little bit better news in that sense that this reactor will be changed quite a lot technically. So it will be very difficult with that reactor to produce in a reasonable time frame plutonium enough for nuclear weapons. So there they had a better deal. Now, how this is going to work, that needs still to be agreed in the details. But this is pretty much based on the IAEA access there. So IAEA will have access under the safeguards agreements, but then there will be some additional authorities in this agreement which still need to be specified. But this will give IAEA more rights to go to suspected places where they have a reason to believe that there are some inconsistencies or could be something which has not been declared. And they will agree on certain arrangements. They have not done it until now. And then IAEA will also monitor the production of uranium from the mines, which is normally not done under the safeguards agreement, and manufacturing of new centrifuges at the fabrication plant, which is also somewhat new thing. And then it has a very frequent access there. And the key thing will be here, you see this access to the military sites. Because, as I mentioned, all nuclear material facilities in a country are accessible to IAEA and should be declared. The question is how to deal with this military installations, because traditionally Iran has had a lot of activities, manufacturing activities in their military workshops. It's nothing unusual because these factories are very modern, they have modern tools, so it makes a lot of technical sense also to do it. But the problem came mainly because then they did some studies, particularly with the high explosives and neutron physics, which point to the direction that someone was looking nuclear weapons related R&D. And this is where Iran has been not very forthcoming. IAEA just got back a couple of weeks ago and again, a couple of days ago, and again, no progress. So that stalemate has been there since 2008. And in this new agreement then, the number of centrifuges for next 10 years will go radically down, the old ones, the new ones also. And this means that the breakout time goes now from this 1 or 2 months, 5, 6 weeks, up to 1 year, where it stays until maybe perhaps 10 years. Oh, this is too dim to be seen. But this just shows the timelines again, and it shows also the lifting of sanctions. Now, you have seen that there is a difference in view again. The US FATC says that the sanctions will be lifted gradually once the agreement is done. The target day is end of June this year. And then US and P5+1, they consider that sanctions will be lifted gradually in such a way that Iran has to do certain activities, and when they have completed, like implementation of additional protocol and dismantling these extra centrifuges and send the extra uranium out, then certain sanctions will drop. And then you go to the next level, and let's say or military dimension gets solved, then the rest of the sanctions will go. But certainly they have to have a down payment in the beginning. Once the agreement is there, some sanctions must disappear. And you know this sanction regime better than me. It's going to be very difficult actually to synchronize it in such a way that on one hand it's fair for Iran, and on the other hand it's also safe solution for the other party. And I think that a lot of discussion in the next 2-3 months will go to this sanction regime, and this will be what they call a hard talk. So this in a very short period of time. So, but the summary, Iran is now a nuclear threshold state. It has all the technical infrastructure, even in this agreement, to develop nuclear weapon in 1 year time if they make a political decision, and this decision is the time which they can choose. So they can do it any time. And this certainly has implications, and particularly in your area, it has also implications neighboring countries. It has implications the way IAEA should do their job to verify, so that it's detected early enough, and the verification system is so robust that Iran really doesn't dare to do it in this time frame. But it also has an impact to other countries like North Korea. This sets a precedent where a country, which has been in non-compliance with its international obligations, can have sensitive technologies to this extent that in 1 year time they can produce nuclear material enough for one nuclear weapon. So this debate will continue for a while, that can this be done, but it seems to me that the P5+1 including US, have agreed this being okay in case of Iran. I understand some reasons why they do it, but a lot of details need to be sorted out that we really can make sure that if Iran renegates this, it will be detected and there is enough time to act, and then the enforcement is there. Because as you know, if someone puts the sanctions back, if the breakout time is only 1 year, you are a little bit playing with the fire, because before the sanctions have that effect, it might be too late. So thank you, and I'm open to any questions which you might have.
Thank you, Professor. I think it seems that positive signs from Iran today. Some military officials said that they will shoot the inspectors. That's what they said. Anyway, now we are open for questions and comments, but please mention your name and don't make it a long statement, just maybe no longer than